Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Merrifield's Gardening Advisor. We are so glad you're here today. And I'm very glad because I've got a very special guest today. Robert Wittman is here. Good morning, Robert.
Thank you for having me. First time that you and I have done a show together.
That's right, by ourselves.
Just by ourselves.
Oh my goodness. Oh my
excited.
Robert, you've seen on the show many times before, and he's usually at our Gainesville location.
Yes,
right?
yeah, all the way up there.
That's right, that's right. Well, we used to have him at Fair Oaks, but now he's at Gainesville. So I don't get to see him as much, so I'm glad you're here.
I'm glad I'm here too. I'm with you. It's a bonus.
Thank you. So we've got a great show for you today. Actually, last week, Robert did a seminar on gardening in deer country, which is a very important topic. And so I asked him to come over and talk about that today.
Yeah, excited to be here. I mean, nothing strikes fear into a gardener than when you see a deer. The only other thing would be is if you're swimming in the ocean and you see a shark.
Right.
So, deer are one of those things that really gets people heated under the collar.
Exactly. And, you know, I don't think you can drive anywhere in this area without seeing deer. I mean, you know the Washington metropolitan area has deer. So a lot going on today before we get started. Our seminars today at our Merrifield location. Robert, I'm going to let you kind of tell about what the seminars are today, if you don't mind.
Yeah, the Merrifield location, we got Pruning Made Easy, presented by Larry Shapiro, starting off at 10 o'clock. And then at our Gainesville location, we can get the next one, there we go. David Yost, who I've stolen his seat, is going to be talking about the fall cleanup and how to get your garden just ready for winter. And that's also at 10 o'clock at the Gainesville location.
Okay, and then get my mic here. There we go. Hopefully that's better.
Small technical problem.
Small technical problem.
Always happens. Live TV.
Okay, so we're going to.
You want me to announce the next one?
Yes,
as well?
could you? Okay. Well, we're going to talk about the. Actually, this is our last seminar of the last seminars of the fall season, and then we're going to start in the. We'll take a couple week break, and then we're going to start up in the fall in the holiday season with 4 seminars, I believe. So holiday themed
Christmas
is going to be here before we know it. Oh, that is for sure. So we hope you'll take advantage of all those. You can go to our website, merrifieldgardencenter.com, and find out what all the seminar schedules are. So that'll be great. Something else exciting happening today, and I'm really excited about this, and I'll tell you that for a second. Our dog Halloween costume contest is today at your Gainesville location.
Gainesville, yes.
So this is the fourth one we've done, and so I'm very excited. I've been out there for it before, but I'm going to be hosting today or emceeing today. So
excellent.
So this will be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that.
It is always a blast. There's always a huge turnout. Yeah. It's always fun to watch.
Oh, the dogs are so cute. The costumes are so cute.
They are.
We're going to have registration starting at noon, and then the actual contest will start at 1. And there's great prizes. The grand prize is a Merrifield gift card worth $100. And then we've got prizes for, let's see, most unique, funniest, scariest, cutest, and best kisser.
Yeah, the best kiss is always the hot one.
Karen really likes that. Karen's our kissing judge. So
she is. Well-trained cheeks.
That's right. So we hope you'll come out and enjoy that. If you don't want to bring a dog to enter, come out and enjoy it because it is a fun time. So take advantage of that. And then one other thing going on next weekend, actually, is the Old Dominion Chrysanthemum Society is going to be having what they're calling a day with chrysanthemums, and that is going to be from 10 to 3 next weekend, and that's going to be at our Fair Oaks location. So that's going to be if you are interested in chrysanthemums at all, and what is really neat about this chrysanthemums is that there's not just the mums that you see in the fall type of thing. Those are what everybody knows. We've got perennial mums, but they are showing some of these really unique chrysanthemums.
It's such a diverse range of different flowers. I mean,
like the
it's
old
amazing
big,
to see.
huge football mums and
the ones you don't see anymore.
Right,
so
that's great.
It's exciting to see.
That'll be next week. So, all right, I think that is all of our announcements for the day. So let's talk about.
You did very good, even with a microphone.
Even with a microphone. Live TV is so much fun.
Well, I mean, we touched on it earlier that the deer population is rising.
Right.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. At one point, it was almost wiped out back in the early 1900s. You know, as the European settlers started moving across the country, they were hunting deer out very very rapidly, you know, for food, for furs and various other things. But that population has rebounded, and at one time it was
then some.
conserved, yes. The Department of Wildlife and Fisheries in Virginia estimates that there's close to 1 million deer now.
Wow.
And that model is only looking to expand as time goes by. And one of the reasons probably is the Bambi Effect, like I like to call it.
Right.
After the film came out, I'm sure a lot of people changed their opinions on deer. All of a sudden it had a cute voice.
Right,
you know,
right.
how could we harm these animals? So it's allowed the population to really explode. We have seen, you know, that deer stay within a certain territory. They don't really move around too much. They can live up to 11 years.
Wow.
And then under sort of optimal conditions without predators, the population can double annually. So, I mean, this is a very fast growing
It really is.
problem in some respects. And you only have to look at the increase of Lyme disease as well,
yes,
which has been tied in with the deer population. And then just the other day, David sent us an email.
Yes, from the, it was from the master, I guess it was from the Master Gardener, or the Virginia Tech program.
Yes,
the,
the county coordinator.
Yes, I'm blanking out here. But through the master, I think they were telling all the master gardeners.
Yeah. And again, it was the
warning.
Virginia Department of Wildlife and Inland Fisheries was talking about it. That deer right now are becoming very active on our roads, so you definitely have to keep a close eye for it. If you see one deer, presume that there's going to be a lot more.
Absolutely. They usually at least 2 or 3 come in a row. So if you're in the car and a deer comes through, I always wait pause a second, just look over from the direction they came, because there may be a couple more coming.
If they do run out in the road, don't swerve.
Right.
Put your brakes on, come to a stop if you have to, because that's where a lot of accidents happen. And if you do have those little whistle gadgets on the front of your car, we're told that those don't work.
Right.
So it gives you a full sense of security.
Yep.
But deer are highly adaptable. They have gotten used to our neighborhoods and also being around us. So, you know, it's very hard to work with them. But what we're going to learn about today is that deer, they have a mantra, which is "Thou shalt not be eaten."
Yes.
So we're going to use different techniques to try and get to them.
That's right.
Make them feel uneasy.
And keep them from eating our gardens, because that's what...
that's the name of the game.
That's the name of the game today. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we've got lots of great ideas for you. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Robert Wittman is here with us today with some great tips on keeping your garden safe from deer, or living with deer, I guess, in your garden.
Coexisting.
Coexisting.
As best we can, yes.
That's right. So you've got a couple interesting pictures to show us here.
I mean, always whenever you're dealing with a pest of some kind, you have to know a little bit about its
habits.
Habits, exactly. And what we're seeing here
is... what is that picture? Can anybody guess?
It stumps a lot of people at first. But this is actually a close-up of the nose of the deer.
See, now when you say that, you can tell what that is. It
makes perfect sense. It's a little bit unusual
When I first looked at that picture, I was like,
yeah, what exactly am I pulling? Well, the nose of the deer, I mean, it's 8 times bigger than our own nose. And it's very powerful. I mean, they can smell stuff from miles away. They know exactly where the plants are that they like to eat through that nose. They can smell where they are. They also know where the pathways. They always follow the same track, so they know exactly where those pathways are.
Right.
And also another fact that I learned the other day is that deer have glands on their feet which give off warning smells. So if the deer are spooked or scared, they leave behind that smell. So the other deer know exactly where those areas of danger are. So playing with that is definitely something we can work with.
Right.
They also have those big ears, and it's supersonic
hearing. You saw that, especially in the last one, but you see it here too.
Yeah, I mean, they can scoop in sound from everywhere. This is why they're a little bit more challenging for hunters to get, because you have to be very quiet. I mean, it far exceeds our own hearing. So the small smallest little crunch of a leaf or a snap of a twig makes them jump, makes them very skittish. And you can see with those eyes, I mean, they're set on the sides of the head, so they've got 270 degrees of vision. They can see all the way around, even in very dim light. Now, they're not very good at focusing, but again, they can see movement. So that's something that we can work on as well.
Well, and speaking of movement, this is what fascinates me. Kind of hop, skip, and jump effect.
They are very good at jumping. They can jump high and they can jump long. Now, one thing we've got to remember, and we can talk about this a little bit later, is that they can't do the two motions at the same time.
Oh, interesting.
So they can't jump high and long. So we're going to play around with that as we get into a segment further along. And then the last one, natural camouflage. I mean, how many times have we been in the garden, and it's only because they move that we see them. But they blend in, and that's their security, is because they're able to just hide somewhere and disappear from us. So again, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but as long as we can get rid of that security, that safety blanket, then we can start getting an upper hand on that, which is definitely something to keep in mind.
So now, what do they usually like to eat?
You know, when I did this on the seminar, everyone was like, really? Come on. I mean, let's look at the slide here, and you'll see exactly the types of food that they do go for.
Okay.
I think everyone has had this problem. Can we go to the slide?
Maybe.
It's in there somewhere.
There we go.
Yeah. Very typical. I mean, there's a lovely group of hostas, or was hostas.
I was going to say, it was hostas.
Yeah, and it's just been left as stalks. And this often happens overnight. So many people go out into the garden and they see this problem. And it gets frustrating. It is, because you've got to wait then for the plant to regenerate. Hopefully it will, without any ill effects. And even if it does, then the deer often know exactly where those plants are. Remember that big nose. So they go right back to it again. The other things that they like, see here with that picture, bird food.
Yeah, I would not have thought about that, but
it's one of those things. Yeah, I again joked with the seminar last week, but I normally do seminars where I'm talking about attracting wildlife in. But if you have a deer problem, then you've got to be mindful that the bird food is also something that the deer are attracted to.
That's true, and some neighborhoods have more than others. So
exactly, yeah. So just be careful with that. Another strange one from their diet needs. If we can look at the next slide, you can see here they like holiday candy.
I would not have known that at all. And they are going after it there. Look at that.
Deer, I mean, they're notorious taste testers. I mean, they go after anything, and they try it at least once.
Wow.
So you can see here, he's checking out the pumpkin there, just to see if there's anything inside it.
And of course, if it's a bad winter and they don't have their usual feeding availabilities, they will eat anything. Yeah,
I mean, they come straight in. I mean, the severity of winters, the availability of food, all of this plays in. And also the size of the local population will have a dramatic effect on what they actually eat. One of the things that I always tell people is that there's no such thing as a deer-proof plant.
That's very true.
Okay, I've got some props here.
Okay, all right.
Just to help emphasize the point.
You brought breakfast.
Donuts. I mean, look at those.
They look
delicious.
Yummy. They do.
Now, quite a few plants in our garden, this is what the deer see, at least, from our perspective. They see these lovely donuts. The hostas to them
here for you.
Are just like that. So what we've got to try and do is to not plant our gardens with these types of food.
Okay, important safety tip, don't plant donuts. Okay.
You can eat the donuts, but don't plant them. Now, what we want to try and do is get food like this. Now, this is actually tofu. It's something which, if the deer are really pushed, they will go after plants like we're probably, if we're very hungry, we'll probably be tempted to try some of the tofu. But admittedly...
Now, of course, some people love tofu. So.
There are those, it's from what I've heard an acquired taste. But I'd be more inclined to eat the donuts before I eat the tofu.
I'm right there with you.
And this is what the deer do as well.
Gotcha.
So we have to identify the plants which the deer think are like tofu.
Oh, like tofu.
They'll only eat if it's a last resort.
Gotcha.
So,
okay, now that makes sense.
We've got to play around with that. There is one last damage that we don't often think about, but rutting. When the deer have the antlers on, they've got that very itchy velvet all over the antlers. They want to get that velvet off as quickly as possible, so they go up to trees, particularly small caliper trees, and just start rubbing on them. And that's where the bark peels off. So, got to be careful there.
There's so many different things to think about. And, of course, the severity of winter makes a big difference. the availability of food, and the deer population.
The amount of the deer population. And we've already talked about the fact that deer population is increasing, so it's putting more strain on our gardens.
Okay. So when we come back from this break, you've got some plants that you're going to show us that are
our
perfect
tofus.
ones. Our tofus, our perfect plants to put in. So we'll be right back. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back. We're talking about gardening in deer country today because we all know there is a huge deer population in our area and they love to eat our gardens. So today we're trying to help you garden a little better with that more in mind. So Robert has gone over to our kind of our front door, front of the house type of part of our set, and he's got some great plants to show you. Robert?
Thank you, Debbie. Yep, here we are, front door, looking at some of the plants that hopefully going to be the tofu plants, the ones that are going to just distract the deer where they're not going to go for so much. The first one to talk about, Boxwoods, got one right over here. This is actually a plant which when they eat, it has a very bitter taste to them. So the deer definitely don't go for these. They've also got a fragrance at different times of the year, which some people either love the smell or hate the smell, but there's a lot of newer types now where they don't have the fragrance as much. But it's a useful plant to use, particularly as a foundation plant when we know that deer are very active. One of the other ones that we can use in our garden very successfully, and it is the time of the year to start thinking about bringing them in. If we can go to the slide, I'll show you some daffodils, which I absolutely love, but then again, I'm from England, and daffodils are one of those plants which we absolutely adore. There we go, you can see it along a roadside planting right there. That welcoming, cheerful yellow that you get in very early winter, early spring, I should say, late winter, is always a welcome sight. But the deer definitely do not like the plant. It is poisonous, and that's one of the things that we can also look at is what kinds of plants are poisonous and which ones we can use there. I love this technique of actually planting them in the lawns, in a lawn area. It just helps break up that big, vast, open space of grass and gives you something very cheerful to look at. The other bonus, squirrels don't even dig up these bulbs, so it's a good one to use there. Another plant that's considered poisonous for deer, we can look at the slide, there we go. Hellebores. Great welcoming flower in that late winter, early spring period. See those flowers come up, it really cheers you up. But this is a poisonous or a toxic plant to a lot of animals. So the deer, they know this because they can smell it. They will leave these plants alone. So these are ones that we can use in our garden. Another thing that we can look at is texture on plants. And if we can just show you this plant right next to me over here. It's called an Elaeagnus, right next to me here. Variegated plant. This one I really like to recommend to people because a lot of people come in and they want to use the golden euonymus, which is something that deer will strip all the way down to just stalks. This one is actually variegated as well. It looks just the same, but Elaeagnus. Particular cultivar is Olive Martini. But it has at this time of the year small little pale whites to creamy white flowers. Very hard to see on the actual stems themselves, but it has this wonderful fragrance, kind of a jasmine-y smell to it. So on certain times during the day, this fragrance hangs in the air. So it's a wonderful one to use, but it has this sort of fuzzy, powdery substance on the leaf that the deer again find unpalatable, and they leave these alone. So it's a great one to use there. And when we talk about fuzzy plants, I mean, nothing is better than lamb's ear, Stakus, which I've got one right here. Extremely soft, almost velvety foliage. But you know, for the deer, when they bite into it, it plays around in their mouth. They don't like the texture, so it's a great one to use for a ground cover in hot, dry locations. And definitely, we have a lot of situations like that in our own gardens. But other plants to think about that have that fuzziness, things like yarrows is a good choice to use as well. But one of the big things is fragrance. If the deer can't smell for predators, because remember they've got that nose right at the very front that picks up all kinds of fragrances and scents, and they're always looking out to see where predators might be lurking and if there's any danger. So if we can block that ability for the deer to sense the danger, then they're not going to eat the plants. A good example is Salvia, which I've got one down here. Sadly, we're coming to the end of the season on them, but it has this wonderful aroma when you start brushing or breaking up the foliage. And that's really going to play havoc with the deer's sense of smell. Of course, things like lavender, which I've got one over here, always a favorite for a lot of people. Just a wonderful aroma. I mean, it's unmistakable. But this is something, again, which just plays havoc with the deer's sense of smell. And of course, prickly plants. They're not going to go after them as much as some of the softer plants. Now, admittedly, it's a plant which us gardeners don't like to deal with too much. Let me show you one of these guys, if I can pick him up. This is a barberry, which has these wicked thorns all over it. It looks like a crown of thorns. This is actually an evergreen barberry, which not a lot of people realize that there is such a thing. And it's called William Penn, has these wonderful sulfur flowers which come out in spring. But you can just see that ruby coloration in the foliage. It's typically a dark green during the summer, but just a wonderful plant to use as part of your arsenal of deer deterrents. Another one which I really like to use, Osmanthus, which I have over on this side, right next to me. Again, you can see it, it's in flower right now. It's often called a false holly because it looks just like a holly. Let me pick it up and I'll show it off there. Okay. You can see the flowers coming out, again, very heady fragrance. A lot of plants that flower at this time of the year need to have super fragrance because they're trying to attract in what few pollinators there might be. So they're very useful to use. I do also like using the one right behind it. This is actually a great screening plant. It's a great alternative to, say, a Leyland cypress, which the deer are known to eat. But this is the green giant arborvitae. And when you crush up the foliage, it has a very citrusy aroma, which is wonderful to use. Not a lot of people realize that until someone tells them, and you can just get in there and smell it. And of course, with fragrance, another good one to use is the Catmint, which if we can go to that slide, you'll be able to see the a Catmint picture, which has wonderful blue flowers. Can we get that slide up? There we go. Great plant to use. Has wonderful, again, it's in the same family as the salvias or the sages, so it has this great fragrance to the foliage, which if the deer are walking on it, again, they can't pick up the smell of anything else.
That's great. So many things to think about.
There is, yeah, there is. I mean, we talked about the bitterness in the plants, but there is a way of actually introducing bitterness. And I've got a couple of products for you right now. This is probably one of my favorites. This is Deer Guard, which is a great one for turning the plants bitter. You spray it onto the foliage. The foliage absorbs the chemical, which is Bitrex, and it turns it extremely bitter for them to taste. There are other kinds as well. We got Repel as well, which uses a different format. Probably one of my favorites is the hot pepper wax, which a lot of people say, well, hot pepper wax almost acts like a condiment for deer, but in some countries they rely on peppers, chili peppers, to repel other types of animals. And if you look at, say, Africa or India, they have problems with elephants, and this is what, you know, they use a hot pepper to try and keep those away. Another one which is fairly new on the market is this guy, Repellents. It's actually a very high dose of capsaicin, or pepper again, the chili peppers, and it's a little tablet that you put in just at the base of the plant. The roots then absorb the capsaicin and it turns the plant very peppery.
Gotcha.
I've been told if you hold a tablet in your hand, you can actually taste the pepper in your mouth.
Really?
So it's a very potent
Didn't want to try that
way of doing it. No.
Don't try this at home.
No, unless you're eating tofu,
That's
which then you might need a little bit of flavor.
And of course, no herd is the same, so they're going to be liking different things.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably plants up there which someone at home's going, it didn't work for me. But it's just trying to find that right combination, and sometimes we have to trial and error just to see what will work. And
you need to kind of mix it up a little bit too, right?
Yeah. Always, you know, introduce diversity as much as you can. And then just take it from there.
Okay. We're going to be right back. We've got some more tips for you for coexisting with deer in your landscape. Stay tuned. We're here with Robert Wittman, and we're talking about gardening in deer country. And so in this segment, we're going to kind of concentrate on landscaping kind of for the deer, because you want to landscape in a way that they won't be so attracted to the plants in your landscape, right?
Yeah. I mean, the more we can keep them on edge, the less likely they are to return to your garden. You know, no one ever wants to go back to a bad restaurant.
Right.
So I mean, this is a great example of camouflage planting, where we can use a lot of those plants which have, in this picture, very strong, fragrant foliage, but we can use it to our advantage, where we can tuck in and have pockets of plants that we know the deer do go for. Because
but
it's going to be a
camouflaged by the others.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
It's going to be a lot harder for them to get up to those plants,
right,
and start nibbling on them. So it gives us a little bit more of a barrier in some respects that
Good
we can
point.
use. We also know that deer follow the same feeding habits all the time. So if we can find out where their pathways are, how they're entering and exiting our gardens, we can use a lot of the plants, particularly the ones with those big thorns that we looked at, in those areas, so that the deer then have to start navigating around them, or, knock on wood,
change their path.
Exactly, change the path. So using plants in those known entry positions to hopefully repel them should work as well. But we also have to look at some repellents, some sprays. It's always something that we have to keep on hand, because we're hitting the deer with various different stimuli all at the same time, just to really get to them and making life as uncomfortable as possible. The big one that I always like to use is the predator avoidance. And I've got some good examples of things right here. Now, the first one sounds horrible, but it's predator urine.
Oh, goodness.
I know.
And there's several types. Look at this.
Several types. There's actually quite a few more, but we only carry the 3 really at the garden centers.
So
Coyote
bobcat,
as well.
coyote, and fox.
Yeah. Now, I've got to admit, I'd love to meet the guy that actually has to walk behind the animal with the bottle, trying to collect this up, and how they get it. Let's not ask too many questions.
That's right.
But if the deer know that there's predators in the area, they're going to be less likely to hang around and feed on the plants.
Yeah, it's a great idea. It really
so
is.
it really does work. And the way you use them, you just use this little bottle right here. There's a little cotton ball inside there. You just fill it up enough just to keep that moist, and then you hang these on the plants of the plants that they're attacking, or just around the perimeters, so that the deer then start leaving the area alone.
So then I guess you just have to replenish that
every now and then. Yeah, I mean, they say it lasts for up to 30 days, and you just top it up. Trying to remember to do that is always the key thing.
When you start seeing the deer come back, then
exactly, then you know it's time to get out there. Another one, there's deer scram, and there's a number of products actually very similar to it. There's Bob X and also Plant Skid. The way that these work is that they have dry blood as part of their main concoction. Again, sounds gruesome to be spraying or shaking out as a powder form dry blood.
Works.
But the deer are going to think, okay, there's a predator around, they've had a fresh kill.
Gotcha.
So I'm not going to hang around in this area. But again, they only last for a certain amount of time, and just remembering to come back out and spray it on is going to be the way to go with these.
Good idea.
So they're great products to use. It's something the deer really won't get used to. But you've always got to try and mix it up as best you can.
Right.
Of course, these are just predator avoidance, and we talked a little bit about taste deterrents in the last segment, plants or products that we can use to make the plants better. But there's also scent repellents, which let me reach over and grab some of these. There's a number of different kinds that are out on the market. Liquid Fence is probably one that a lot of people know about, which is this guy right here. You basically spray it around the perimeter of your property. It's actually made out of putrefied eggs.
I am starting to smell a little bit of this.
You can. I had to be very careful inside the car bringing these in. There's nightmares of these spilling, which every now and then it happens inside our garden centers. It will initially, when you spray it, probably repel yourself. But as long as it's doing that, then you know it's definitely going to work against the deer. There's other products like this one here, which has mint oil, cinnamon, cloves, things like that added in. And then we also have just over here, these are actually little clip-on spikes that smell of garlic. Very strong. And it comes in somewhat of a weatherproof container, so it's not going to wash away as rapidly as some of the others.
That's good.
But they work extremely well as well. So always something that we've got to keep around. And using combinations of all of these things, we can really do a good job about trying to keep the deer away.
And as we were saying before, if you kind of mix it up, if you use one for a little while and then use another, is that good?
Because eventually the deer actually, like I said, they're adaptable. They will get used to the aroma of certain things, and after a while they're not going to be too phased. But if you switch up, say, your Liquid Fence with Bob X that has fish emulsion, fish meal, it's introducing a different fragrance and kind of fools them for a bit, then switching back to Liquid Fence. Definitely mix up your products.
Okay, all right. We've got Couple of
other things,
okay.
yeah. Definitely fencing is the way to go with a lot of things. I mean, I've got a little packet right here of deer netting. If you're planting pansies in your garden, that's one of the things that the deer go straight for. So you might have to use some netting over the top of your pansies.
And you probably need to make sure, is it 6 feet? Is that how far they can jump or something like that?
I think it's actually up to 7 or 8 feet.
Is it really?
Yeah,
Wow.
so fencing, you got to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Like I said at the very beginning, if you have a fence, they can jump high, but they can't jump long at the same time.
Okay.
So planting the back of the fence up with shrubs and removing the landing zone where the deer can come up and over and land safely will definitely make them less likely to jump a fence. So keeping that planted up is the way to go. There's also various other things that you can use. I've also got right behind me.
A whole arsenal here.
I do. I brought out everything, the big guns.
The big
today.
guns.
Scarecrows, which is basically a motion-censored irrigation head. If the deer walk in front of it, it goes off. Downside is, as today it was freezing cold, you can't really have this live in the garden because it will just freeze up and won't work for you.
Right.
But they do get used to things like this as well, so you got to again switch it up, bring it out every now and then, and play with them. And I've also got scare tape, very good one for birds, but you can use CDs as well.
Just old CDs?
Old CDs. Anything that gives off that
reflection,
flash of light.
Gotcha.
Because remember, we talked about how their eyesight is. They pick up that movement, makes them very jumpy.
Right.
So with the CDs, as it spins in the wind, or the scare tape as well.
Gotcha.
Again, they see that glinting and start getting worried about it.
And you were talking about earlier with me, reduce your fertilizer.
Yes, yeah. It's something, again, which you don't see written about. But plants that are fertilized, particularly with high nitrogen, taste very good for the deer, and it also attracts them in. It's almost like putting salt on your French fries. It makes them more tastier. So if you do have a deer problem, just cut back on the amount of fertilizer that you're using, particularly even your lawn fertilizer, because remember, that nose is picking up those salts and minerals that are in that fertilizer and drawing them into your yard. The other interesting point, and I know it's a touchy one to talk about, but deer get about 1/3 of their moisture needs from eating plants.
Oh, right.
So we got to be careful that we're not over irrigating the gardens. Now, we're always going to tell you to really check for watering, never let anything dry out. But if you're one of those people which have those irrigation systems and you set it and forget it, the chances of you attracting in deer because you're overwatering are going to be a lot higher than someone who's carefully watering.
Right.
So being able to dial back on that's going to be a benefit.
So both with the water and the fertilizer, you've got that measure which way you need to go.
Yeah, so being careful on that. You know, this is if you really do have a deer problem.
Right.
Just changing some of your habits up will definitely help reduce your issue.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a break. We've got a few more points to make, but we're also going to be taking your phone calls in the next segment. So 703-387-1046 is our number. Give us a call, and we'll be right back. Okay, we've given you a lot of information. We still have a little bit more to give you, but I just wanted to mention that we try to put all of our shows, copies of our shows, on our website, MerrifieldGardenCenter.com, with kind of the listing of what we're talking about. So you can go after the show. We try to have them up on Saturdays, but sometimes it takes a day or two. But you can go to our website, MerrifieldGardenCenter.com, click on and see what we've been, actually watch the show and see what we've been talking about. So
it is a lot of information.
It's a lot of information. And kind of to help bring it all together, we've got you've got a timetable here.
Yes, a timetable of events that you often see with the deer. Just knowing of some of these habits that the deer go through will definitely help in controlling your issue. Now we know January through to April that their metabolism is slow, they're less active, so their food requirements are a lot lower. You can see they've only needing about 4 to 5 pounds of food just to survive. So spraying repellents, you're only really targeting woody herbaceous plants, trees, shrubs, that kind of thing. Your perennials are already dormant in the ground, they're safely tucked up for the winter, so there's not going to be so much of an issue. Key point to remember is that the rutting period for the deer has ended. They've already gone through their breeding season, the antlers have fallen off. So if you have any tree guards on your trunks, now's the time to remove them. You don't want to provide an opportunity for voles or other bark-chewing critters to move in undetected and start damaging your plants when you've kept the deer away from them.
Okay.
In the next slide, we're coming on in the time frame here. You'll see mid-April through to June. This is when the does are pregnant, they're giving birth, so their food intake goes up quite dramatically. So they're looking around for a lot of those soft succulent stems, which a lot of the herbaceous perennials are beginning to push up out of the ground. So that's when they're going to start going after those. So you need to start spraying repellents on other plants at that time frame as well. So looking around to seeing what's beginning to emerge and what might be attacked is critical at this time frame. Our next period to look at is July through to mid-August. The thorns are beginning to grow, so they're actually the ones which will taste test. Now the mothers will know what they like and don't like, but these thorns will go around nibbling on everything. Even plants that we thought were deer resistant to a certain respect, they're going in and just testing them out to see if they like it or not. We're beginning to see a lot more garden raids because they're moving around a lot more. The fawns are more active, so the packs, the herds are moving as well. And they're mostly, again, just feeding off of perennials and herbaceous plants. But again, keep spraying your herbaceous and woody plants. Next slide, we got late August to September. Beginning to see those antlers come back on the deer again, so we got to start thinking of putting up our tree guards, our trunk guards on that. The diet has now switched to what's being produced by the trees, nuts, fruits, things like that.
Gotcha.
So we are seeing a downturn on how much they're coming into the garden because they're beginning to go off looking for those very high fatty, protein-rich foods.
Right.
So you can, in some respects, relax a little bit on your spraying and being careful there. For the very last slide, October through to December, rutting begins. Definitely those guards have to be up. The raids all start up again. They're going to be finishing off feeding on perennials as well as grass until they all die back. So we need to just again step up the repellents.
Right, and this time frame, the October through December, is where they're the most active. Right, that's what they were saying. Yeah. Okay.
So
and you have a couple of book recommendations.
I love these two books. I bought these a while back. They're very thumb-through pages. I love the first one, Deer-Proof in Your Yard and Garden. A lot of very helpful tips in there. The second one's very good if you're looking for fencing ideas and things like that. And they've also got great venison recipes at the back. So they like to really emphasize the coexisting with deer. If they eat your plants, you can eat them in return. So they're two very great books.
Great.
Definitely worthy for any bookshelf.
Super. Okay, we've got a couple of phone calls holding, and our first one is Sandra. And where are you calling from, Sandra?
Atlanta, Maryland.
Great. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. Praise God. I'm so excited to be on your show.
All right. What can we do for you?
Years I've shopped at your garden. I've attended your classes, and I so appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What can we help you with today?
I have a problem with lizards. They're eating up my hostas. And I do have a problem with squirrels and voles, but my main concern right now is the lizard disease.
Lizards. Interesting.
There's always something.
Right.
You know, just when you think you've controlled the deer, along comes something else. Normally we hear about rabbits, which is my nemesis really, and groundhogs as well. But lizards, I've got to be honest, I don't know exactly how you would control lizards. Eventually, it could just be that the population has really increased a lot this year, so they're roaming around looking for food. But lizards typically are looking for insects as opposed to plant material. So I got a feeling you might be seeing the lizards, but there's something else that's playing into it. The lizards are normally a gardener's friend because they're the ones eating the bugs, the grasshoppers, and various other things. I would suggest just take a good look in there and see if you can see any other signs, droppings of animals, things like that, and hopefully we can identify what it is.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for calling.
Repel it and look for moles.
Look for, I'm sorry, what?
I'm going to try to repel it and look for moles. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
okay.
Thanks so much for the call. Have a great weekend. Okay, let's see. Let's talk to Joan from Temple Hills. Hi, Joan.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good. How are you? Do you have a quick question?
Yes. What is the best time of year to resod my whole front yard?
Good question. You can actually resod right now. There's no problem with putting down sod. It's only really until the ground freezes that you ultimately stop. But the soil temperature is nice and warm, so those roots will start establishing a lot quicker for you. We're in a cooler period as well. And knock on wood, plenty of rainfall, so that will help with the establishment. So go ahead and get the job done now.
Okay. One more question.
Sure.
And that is, I have stray cats in the neighborhood, and they have urinated and defecated all around my hostas, my azaleas, my holly bush, and they all died. What can I do for cats?
Sadly, there's not a lot you can do. There are various repellents you can buy for cats and dogs, but you might have to put a call into animal control for your county and just see if they can come by and hopefully trap some of them.
Okay.
And move them on. Okay.
Okay.
Good
One
luck
more
with
question.
that.
This is real important.
Okay, we got.
When are you going to open a Maryfield Garden in Maryland on this end of the Beltway?
Oh, that's a good question. We'll have to work on that.
We will.
Thanks so much for the call. Have a great weekend. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk to Belle. So, Belle, hang on there. We'll be right back. Hey, our time is flying by, so let's quickly get back to Belle, who's calling from Alexandria. Hi, Belle.
Hi,
Thanks for holding. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Good.
I'm trying to do, I have a little plant home, and I just wanted to plant some azaleas and so forth. Is it too late? Is it too enough to put it in the ground, or shall I leave them in a pot?
What's in the pot? I'm sorry.
Azaleas.
Azaleas.
Azaleas?
Okay.
Any other, I just bought two, three kinds of azaleas and some other flowers. Shall I just put them in the ground, or shall I leave them in the pot?
No, now's a wonderful time for putting them in. Just like the last caller with the sod, you got lovely warm soil right now. We're into hopefully more steady rainfall, cooler temperatures. It's going to be less stressful on the plants if you plant now. Just remember to break up that root ball so that you can encourage those roots to grow outwards. They've been inside those containers, so they're kind of wrapped around on the inside. So we want to make sure that they're growing outwards instead of continuing with that circling effect. So breaking up that root ball, giving them a water, keeping an eye on them, it should be fine. Shouldn't have any problems establishing it at this time of the year.
So shall I water them through the end of November if there is no rain?
If there's no rain, you're going to have to do some watering, but I always tell people just check before you water. We have one of the best moisture probes, our fingers. Just feel the soil, feel if it's moist, push it down a little bit deeper into the soil.
And don't forget to water it during the winter as well.
Exactly, they will need it if it's a particularly dry winter.
Right. Thanks so much for the call. Have a great weekend. Okay, let's see, our next our next caller is Diane, who's calling from Washington, D.C. Hi, Diane.
Hello.
How are you?
Okay. I'm doing very well.
Good.
I'm having the deer problem. This is my first year. I have never really seen deer in my
they've
neighborhood.
arrived.
So it's a new experience for me. My plants have already been eaten. Now they are coming in the yard. I have a large oak tree. And I think, at first I thought it was the grass, but I think it is the acorn. So what can I do to, because when I come home, sometimes it's getting dark early and the deer are already in the yard. I come from work and I'm afraid to come, into my own yard. So what can I do about that?
I mean, the deer probably are so used to you being in your garden that they're probably not going to run away anymore. That's how adapted they've become. But they're in your garden because of the acorns. They're looking for the food. They're looking to bulk up their body fat for the winter. So they're coming in for that. Now you can go through and remove as many of the acorns as you can to get rid of that food source. And then just start using the repellents and various other things to hopefully push them on to a different location. They found your garden, they're on that established route. Now we just got to try and figure out how we can push them off of that pathway and free your garden up so you can start gardening again.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, great advice. So Diane, hope that helps you. I think we lost her there, but so our next caller is Joe, who I believe is calling from Frederick. Is that correct?
Fredericksburg.
Oh, good. How are you today?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Do you have a quick question?
Yes, I've heard a comment there about the deer whistles. Now, the deer whistles, I've had more than 30 years experience with those, and I can't tell you they will work, but there are conditions.
Gotcha.
They are dependent on how much air is being forced through the front of them. And at speeds below 40 miles an hour, they're not going to work very well.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
At
Which is
speeds
probably what
above
most
40
of
miles an hour, say like it's 60 miles an hour, they work extremely well.
Right.
And I've seen deer along the sides of the road, and they are just they're in a freeze position, or they are transfixed by the sound of them. But if you're at a slow speed, they're not going to work.
That makes perfect sense.
You have to have your car in motion, and it has to be, say, 40 miles an hour or above. Usually around 50 or 60, they work real well.
And through a lot of the neighborhoods, you've got slower speeds, so that makes perfect sense.
They're not going to work.
Right.
Yeah.
When your car's not moving, or when they're at speeds at 25 miles an hour, they're not going to work.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate that. Have a good weekend. Okay, let's see. Charlotte is calling from Fort Washington. Charlotte, we've got about a minute. Do you have a really quick question?
I sure do. Okay. Yes, of course we have a problem with the deer, but my concern is if we are getting these deer repellent products, are they going to be harmful to our dog?
Good question.
It is a good question. I mean, just always follow the manufacturer's recommendations on the back of the bottles. Definitely things like dry blood, the dogs will go sniffing for.
Right.
So, you know, it is going to be a problem there.
Just follow those labels. That's great.
Follow the labels and you'll be safe.
Good point. Thank you so much for the call. We have run out of time. I'm so sorry. Robert, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
You can see him at the Gainesville location anytime you want. So and hope you'll come back. Actually, hope you'll come to the Gainesville location today for the dog contest, the seminars today at 10 a.m. So have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.